Hey, what's up, YouTube family? So, for this month, the month of June, I am starting a series around boundaries, and we will go through topics such as understanding boundaries. I'll be talking a lot about porous boundaries, which is something that I've struggled with. And just to kick it off with a disclaimer, no, I am not a licensed practitioner, a clinician. I'm not even a life coach. I wouldn't consider myself in any of those trained categories to really give a person specific guidance about their life. What I'm sharing today with you is my human experience in working to overcome challenges that I've dealt with from growing up until now as an adult with two boys and boundaries. So, in working to understand boundaries, I know that, again, I've struggled with having porous boundaries. So, if you think about a sponge, right, you have a dry sponge and there's a big puddle of water. If you put that sponge in that puddle of water, it's going to soak up as much of the water as it can and become very dense. And when you relate that to boundaries, you can look at boundaries similarly with someone who has porous boundaries, just taking on more than what they can and still respect themselves. So if another person's energy, mood, requirements, needs is just more than what is comfortable for you, you can still find yourself, if you have porous boundaries, in a situation to where you're just trying to people please, accommodate, soak up, as much of the energy that you can in order to change the dynamic of the situation, to a happier, more favorable one at the expense of yourself. So, what I mean by that is you are doing this, right? Because there's nothing wrong with serving people, making sacrifices, making compromises, but you're doing this at the expense of your own values, your own needs, your own desires. And you're not happy with it. It is costing you more in character. So things like self respect, self trust, discernment. It's costing you more in the areas of life that really matter to you than what it's giving you. It's not increasing your self trust, it's not increasing your self respect, it's not increasing your ability to feel comfortable and confident in the decisions that you make for yourself. So when you think about it in those terms, these are very loose boundaries that at the end of the day, it doesn't serve you because you feel miserable, and it doesn't serve, and I'm just going to talk about this in the context of a romantic relationship. It doesn't serve your partner either, because with you being miserable and not bringing, that positive energy in, it creates, an unhealthy dynamic. You can start to build resentment or anger or frustration or sadness or guilt or shame or a lot of the other, emotions that, if you sit with those, it'll just make for an unhealthy and an unhappy dynamic. So, in giving that introduction, I just wanted to share. So, we're talking about boundaries, right? And one correlation, again, for me specifically, so I'm not a clinician, one correlation that I found with me having or overcoming porous boundaries is that I also had a lot of traits that would be considered codependent inside of a relationship. So I overly relied on my partner to fulfill certain needs, that really needed to come from within me and within myself. And a book that has helped me to understand that and be able to differentiate and understand, like, okay, these are my needs versus these are the needs I have in a relationship, is called Women Who Love Too Much by Robin Norwood. I first discovered this book in 2022. I would say probably the summer of 2022. I had recently went through a breakup, and I had been listening to just a lot of self-help, motivational content creators on YouTube. I came across a platform with the creator by the name of Noah Kagan, and he actually wasn't like just a self-help guru or anything. He talked a lot about finances and business and interviewed so many successful millionaires and billionaires. So I was watching his content to understand the mindset of people who achieve that level of success. But in doing so, he also included a list of books that he's read off of Goodreads. So I went and looked at some of those books and just the ratings. And this book, again, Women Who Love Too Much, came up as like a 4.5 or 4.8, but like really high rating. And, you know, one of the books that he really felt like inspired him or impacted his way of viewing women. So the title alone caught my attention because I was in a season of heartbreak. But I think the title and the actual book itself doesn't really match. I think the title is more so to draw you in. It can actually, if I just looked at it and I didn't know the context or the content of the book, I would think it sounds more of like a woe is me. Women are victims, and why do we love so much? And these guys just, you know, can't get it right. But when you actually dive into the book, you see that it's way like it doesn't have anything to do with being a victim. It is very much a empowerment type of message saying, hey, you need to understand why you behave the way that you do, how codependency is linked to that, and then also giving you self-help steps towards the end of the books, like in the last chapter on how to overcome. So I just want to take a little bit of this book. Right now I'm in chapter 8, When One Addiction Feeds Another. I'm just going to read a couple of excerpts. Hopefully that's okay. On YouTube, it's not more than a page. Really, it's less than a page. But I'm going to read a few of these excerpts and then explain how that specifically impacted me and my thoughts. So I'm in chapter 8, When One Addiction Feeds Another. There is a great deal of pain in life, and perhaps the only pain that can be avoided is the pain that comes from trying to avoid pain. So I'll read that back. There's a great deal of pain in life, and perhaps the only pain that can be avoided is the pain that comes from trying to avoid pain. So essentially, what I'm taking from this Dr. Laing quote is you can't avoid pain, right? Like, you can try to distract yourself, try not to feel, try to do all the things, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be there. And there was actually a clip that I watched that talked about grief. One was from Tyler Perry, and then I'm drawing a blank on the other young man's name. I think he's like a stylist or some type of clothing brand creator. But it was pretty much saying pain will be there. Like when you get through with all of your busyness, your schedule, your job, your kids, your hobbies, your self-care, throw in the title. When you get through all of those things, it'll be right there waiting for you, like clockwork. So it's really important that you carry the belief with you that pain can't be avoided. It can be managed. It can be, you know, felt, and then you move through it, but it can't be avoided. So that was a good opening, like, catch for me in this book. But if we get into the actual content, at our worst, we women who love too much are relationship addicts, strung out on pain, fear, and yearning. As if this weren't bad enough, men may not be the only thing that we're hooked on. In order to block our deepest feelings from childhood, some of us also develop dependencies on addictive substances. In our youth or later in adulthood, we may have begun using alcohol or other drugs, most typically for women who love too much food. We have overeaten or undereaten in both in order to tune out our reality, distract ourselves, and numb the vast emotional emptiness deep inside of us. Not every woman who loves too much also eats too much or drinks too much or uses too many drugs. But for those of us who do, our recovery from relationship addiction must go hand in hand with our recovery from addiction to whatever substance or behaviors we abuse. So, just pausing there for a moment and looking back, I can see I've fortunately, by grace of God, I've not been a person to abuse drugs. Like alcohol, I've had periods in my life, seasons in my life where I felt like I was moving like a functional alcoholic several years ago, but that was, I say, I don't know, 6 months to a year, and that was also during a time where I felt like the pain inside the relationship that I was going through was just so overwhelming, and I was looking for an escape. I was looking for a way to try and numb that feeling. But I have experienced, other types of substances or thoughts and behaviors that I can say that I related to. Definitely fear, guilt, and shame. So it goes on to say, these are the reasons why. The more we depend on alcohol, drugs, or food, the more guilt, shame, fear, and self-hate we feel. So you are looking for an escape. You're looking for a way to try and tolerate this pain without actually feeling it and going through it, right? So, and that's not going to work. It's not going to work. So when you do that, you're also creating this cycle of feeling shame, feeling guilt, not being able to trust yourself, just, creating this monster. The monster's already there in your head mentally, but it's small. But once you start feeding it with all of these destructive habits that you're creating, then it gets bigger. It gets bigger. The fear gets bigger. The shame gets bigger. The noise gets louder. So it's just a self-perpetuating cycle at this point. And I think the next part where it talks about increasingly lonely and isolated, we may become desperate for the reassurance a relationship with a man seems to promise, because we feel terrible about ourselves We want a man to make us feel better because we cannot love ourselves. We need him to convince us that we are lovable. We even tell ourselves that with the right man, we won't need so much food or so much alcohol or so many drugs. So I think that goes back for me, as I relate like to that attention, right? When you're able to capture the attention of someone who you also find interesting, attractive, fill in the blank, right? Desirable of that type of a man. And you don't have enough self love and self trust built up within you, you will overvalue the attention. Because if we look at it for what it is, attention is just attention, right? If we are scrolling our phones and we're on social media, whatever we're looking at for that split second has our attention. But that doesn't mean it also has like our commitment. It doesn't even mean it has a high level, it has our high level of interest. It's just, it could be entertainment, it could be educational, it could be a variety of things, but attention in and of itself isn't the most valuable thing that a person can give you. There has to be more behind the attention, intention. So behind the attention, you also need intention. And when women are in this state of yearning for love, yearning for a relationship, you can often mistake attention for intention. And we often do. Just because you haven't, done enough for yourself in order to not mistake that. So again, we often tell ourselves with the right man, things will be better. Life will be better, right? It's like that knight in shining armor who's coming to rescue you from all of your woes, all of your troubles. With this man, I won't drink as much. With this man, I'll be more into my health, more into my fitness. With this, if I can consistently have the attention of said guy, then life would get better for me. But that is a way of trying to avoid the pain. And you can't. Again, there's a great deal of pain in life. And perhaps the only pain that can be avoided is the pain that comes from trying to avoid pain. So, this book, it is great. It's a book, like I said, I found out about it in the summer of 2022, and we're now in 2026, and I've reread this book at least 4 times, and I also have the audio version, and every time that I look at it, I learn something new. It's over 300 pages, and I would say maybe like 6 hours, 7 hours if you are listening to it on average speed on Audible. But if anything that I just said resonated with you in terms of the way you approach relationships, especially relationships with men, your thoughts on how you may have felt like if I just get the right person, things would change for me, life would be better for me, I can stop doing certain things that I'm doing. If any of that resonates with you and where you are today, I would highly recommend this book. I recently purchased the journal that is not attached to this book. Like the author, she didn't make the journal, but it is helpful. It read through, the journal takes the context of the book and then creates prompts to kind of help you work through and process, a lot of these unhealthy and unhelpful traits that you may be experiencing. And yeah, overall, I think this is a great introductory book into understanding how codependency can create poor boundaries, right? Because if you are overly dependent, so if you have a lot of traits of codependency where you're overvaluing attention, where you are moving according to what you believe a relationship can bring you, and now though that movement is outside of things that you would normally do. So say for instance, right now you're single and you typically exercise, right? You've been an avid workout person, and you also have a certain type of diet that you usually eat to maintain your nutrition habits. Now you meet someone and this person doesn't work out, totally fine, but also loves to go to the fast food drive through regularly, doesn't really care about nutrition to those degrees. The nutrition for him is what tastes good. And you're trying to align yourself with this type of person just because of some of the other traits he may bring. He may, make you laugh. He may be someone who you just feel alive with and compliments you and takes you out on dates regularly. And again, just providing this attention that makes you feel special. Now, you and said person, again, are not in alignment. Like your life starts to change because instead of working out regularly, eating at home, or counting, your carbs, knowing your calories, keeping track to things that made you love yourself more, now you've positioned yourself to go with the flow, go with his flow. And that is an example, a small example of what becoming codependent can look like, because none of that, doing any of that, isn't serving you, it isn't growing you, it isn't making you respect yourself more, trust yourself more, but you are garnering the attention and just that energy that you're seeking to be brought into your life. So that's just, an example of how you can fall. And this book for me will be something that I continue to reread because, again, it empowers you to understand just how much influence you actually have over yourself, over your life, the direction that you want to take it, and how to make sure when you do, get involved inside of a relationship, that you're looking at the right things that will ultimately grow you. So I hope this video has been helpful. Like I said, I'll continue to do videos that are based around boundary setting and related topics for this month. And I hope to see you back soon in the next one. Till then, bye.